day, Zach.
Hey,
Good day to
Zach,
everyone watching the recording.
Yeah. Nothing better than recorded small talk.
Yeah.
Broadcast. Hey Trey, good to see you here.
Hey, bud. Sorry to be off camera.
Yeah, no worries. Trey, Jacques, have you met?
No, I don't think so.
I don't believe so.
Great. Well, Trey works at the Atlantic Council, so think tank, like Washington, D.C. life, I guess, hence the panda. But very interested in supply chain security broadly, especially from a policy angle. So is here, I guess, to check it out. Jacques works at Spotify, works a lot in the Ruby ecosystem.
Technically Shopify, which is often confused because they start with S and then IFI. Yeah, I know the feeling.
Sorry.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Trey. I read the Atlantic Council paper on supply chain issues a while back. I was really impressed. It was very helpful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, we're hoping to build on some of that work in conjunction with Brian and the team here. So this is our, we'll be in listening mode for a while until we can figure out how we can be helpful.
Hey, everybody.
Okay, Sterling. So we're starting to get some people coming in now. Oh, good. I just coughed in your ears. I'm sorry.
Yeah, better coughing into my ears than coughing into my nose.
True. Some advantages of being remote. Oh, thank you for posting that, Zach. I'll give it a few more minutes before we start.
I'll keep posting the link every couple of minutes as folks join, but yeah, here's a link to the meeting minutes agenda.
I think I'll give it about another 2 minutes. I'd like to see some more repo folks. Welcome everyone who's joining the last few minutes. I'm going to give it a few more minutes before we kick off. There's a link to the notes, and if you can mark yourselves as attending, that would be super helpful. Okay, folks, it's 5 minutes past, and I think we can get started. It's relatively thinly attended today. Normally we have more. There must be some sports game going on somewhere that I don't know about and indeed care about. So the first thing we're going to start with, as we do in most meetings, is a welcome to our new friends. So if you're new to the group, or if you've been here before and you haven't introduced yourself before, now's a great time to let us know about yourself and why you're here.
Hello, I'm Mihai. I joined Google's supply chain security team recently with Simon and Madir from here in the chat.
Welcome.
Hey, yeah, I can maybe go next. Midair, nice to meet you. I work on the Google open source security team, and the sort of software package distribution is a very important problem. So very, very interested in this space.
Absolutely. Anyone else would like to pop up and introduce themselves? All right, we're all friends here. So first of all, let's have a look at the action items. I don't see most of the folks listed in this, although I do see, Zach, that you were tagged in an action item to talk about how widespread domain resurrection is.
I misleadingly made the first word of this action item someone else's name. But we've been spending a bunch of time in the past couple of weeks, couple of months, talking about this threat of domain resurrection attacks, quote unquote. And so that the sort of classic example is I sign up for my RubyGems account with a vanity email domain. And then I go, I don't know, stop programming, stop renewing my domain, my registration lapses, someone else snaps up that domain. They run the password reset flow on RubyGems, and the password recovery email gets sent to a new person who is not me and should not be publishing packages under my name. And so we've been discussing a lot of potential mitigations, potential ways to detect this. But we were realizing we don't really understand very well how widespread this problem is. It's flashy, you hear about it, but maybe it's, like a couple of packages that don't have any downloads. So we're interested in quantifying that. And I had hoped to have a proposal by tonight, but I don't. So expect that in the next few days. But a proposal basically for if you have access to a database of users for a package repository, some templates for queries you could run over those sort of users that would give us some insight into this, and so that I suppose is so that'll come in the next couple of days, and it'll be done in a way where you can run it yourself. You don't have to share any information which might be sensitive, but we can get some interesting aggregate statistics to really within this group understand the problem. So expect that in the Slack and maybe in the email group.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I remember when we discussed this last time, was how prevalent is it actually? Very high profile when it happens, but next one I see is Jason has a Java specific doc. I don't see Jason here today, so I think we'll have to skip over that one. It might be the same with Alex and Patrick and Brandon. So I think, unfortunately, we've burned through the action items unless anyone can speak up for one of those folks. Okay,
I'm here.
Well,
sorry.
I'm sorry, Patrick. I didn't see you.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry, I'm having some internet issues right now. I don't really know what the JSON doc is. So we just as an update, we did sort of come to a resolution on the multi-artifact thing. We're going forward with signing like every artifact because we've sort of established that that's not really a problem on the recourse side, and it's simpler for us to go that way. Right now, what we're looking at is trying to come up with a kind of something that makes sense for Java as like a format for making sure that we store all the bits that we need to do offline verification, because that might be a concern in the long run. And we also want to share that doc with the other package managers so that we can like we might consider sort of doing the same thing across the different languages. Yeah, great.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, where possible, having shared schemata, to avoid having to write different monitors over and over. Although we'll probably do it just because it's fun. All right, so the first one of the agenda
Actually,
items. Oh,
Jacques,
sorry, go ahead,
I
Patrick. Oh, Zach.
Zach, yeah, I can speak to Jason's document. It's very complementary to the existing domain resurrection doc that I wrote, just with some Java specific flavor. So I think we can just go ahead and give Jason Swank is the one responsible for that. So I'll give him another ping and hopefully he'll share it out with the group.
Actually, I'm here from Sonatype. Jason is out on PTO for the next couple of weeks. Yeah, so I'm taking notes for him today. But I do recall when he, reported to me that he had chatted with you, Zach, and I can't remember where the ball is on our part. But I haven't seen the latest doc, but he's
Okay.
out until first week of July. Sorry.
Gotcha. Thanks for sharing that, Joel.
Yeah.
The document itself is in, I think, pretty good shape and ready for folks' comment. I just didn't want to be the one to hit the button. I'd rather.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I'll, I expect, we're not going to try to check in with him while he's out. But it's good
Of course.
that you agree that it's in good shape. I think that was one of the things you needed confirmation on. And I'll add it to the list of things when I check in on him when he's back on how good it is to send out, because he didn't let me know that he was final on it yet.
Great. Yeah, that sounds great. And I don't think it's blocking anything. Again, I think it's just some additional color on top of what we've already been talking about. So cool. Thanks, Joel.
Thank you.
Cool. Before I announce again that the first item is mine, is there anything else that folks had from the action items that they could bring up or cover, or wanted to ask a question about that maybe we could answer? I'll take that as a no. So the first one here, it says asking for help with domain monitoring. I wish Jacques had left more detailed notes about what he meant. But if I had to take a guess, this is probably a question about domain experiences with domain monitoring services. So I know of at least one package service that uses a service called Domainar, which requires bulk uploading domains to be checked. And we were curious whether people are aware of more dynamic or callback style domain monitoring, because that reduces the window of opportunity for attackers. So I was wondering if anyone is familiar with anything like that, or if I should bring that up at another meeting. Okay, sounds like we'll have to revisit that one. One here is marked for Miles. I don't think Miles is here by the look of it. This is, I think, going to be a returning topic of discussion, which is that some of the security measures that we're introducing also introduce support load. So the classic example is multi-factor authentication. I love it, you love it, everyone loves it. And then they lose their phone and they don't love it anymore. And they want their stuff to be reset. And so there's a support burden to fix it, but also to ensure that you're not being socially engineered as a support person, because bad people can be very persuasive. I think Miles was looking for other experiences. Don't see, apart from Joel and Patrick, I don't see a lot of folks from like repos at the moment who have some experiences they could share. But if you had other experiences of that kind of support burden, it would be interesting to learn.
Yeah, I think sorry, Sterling, go for it.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, well, I know one of the reasons Miles wanted to bring this up is that, so NPM, for instance, and Maven Central, of course, have organizations behind them with reasonable staffing. A lot of the other repositories are volunteer run for the most part. And so we just wanted to float the idea of perhaps the OpenSSF being the vehicle through which these volunteer run repositories get, perhaps support staff and common practices there, and sort of perhaps some economies of scale when it comes to identity verification and so on. So I don't know that there was a specific action item that was going to come out of that, other than we want to explore using the OpenSSF as the means by which we achieve that in the medium long term.
Yeah, and the only thing I was gonna say is like our little corner of the world is very small, and we have like a person a week who spends not even half time dealing with requests that come in, and but we also offload like a lot of stuff onto like GitHub logins and stuff, so we don't even have 2FA really stuff to worry about right now, even though we should. But yeah, another problem.
Young, I'm embarrassed to admit I don't know which organization you usually work with.
Gradle.
Gradle. Cool. Interesting. Yeah, I think we're going to have to discuss this topic again when we have a larger contingent of folks on. I guess this time is pretty rough for folks in Europe. Although obviously that's why we do it, so we can have overlap with the Asia Pacific region. The next thing is me again. This one is interesting. So Sigstore is planning for its GA release. One question they had for the group was, what, if anything, do you expect has to be done? Like from the perspective of a repo maintainer who's relying on Sigstore, like what do you feel is like a non-negotiable minimum that folks need to achieve? And there was some discussion around like what SLOs should be targeted for these services, like what SLOs are required to be effective. I think they were targeting, maybe Zach, you remember this. I think they were targeting like 3 nines or 4 nines.
I don't want to be quoted on that, but I will get at you. Simon might know as well, but I can link the doc.
3 nines was the straw person. Yeah.
Right. So that would
it's in line with transparency logs, public transparency logs.
Okay. Yeah, that's not too bad. I mean, it'll break a few builds from time to time, but we can aspire to higher nines as time goes on. But also, I guess the question was like, was there anything else people can think of off the top of their head where they've been saying, oh, we've been waiting for X, or, I'd be surprised if Y happens. Again, I feel like we're going to have to revisit this topic again, although maybe get more difficult because I think GA is probably going to be announced next week at the Open Source Summit. I think there's an appetite for making a splash.
Not sure about the announcement. There's still discussion on the bar for GA. So if there's discussion about, if there's an announcement, it won't be we are going GA. It will be here are the plans for GA. I think some of the questions we also had for this group were, in the period up to GA where the SLO is aspirational and maybe not achievable given lack of rotation for on-call rotation, those kinds of things. What should we be sort of communicating around just expectations for Sigstore flows with package managers? Are we comfortable saying, yeah, like take this on, use it in, there's a fail close dependency in critical flows, or some bar in between, because we have, it's possible that things go wrong leading up to GA, and we have significant outages in the meantime.
Do we have a strategy for sort of like dark rollouts for Sigstore support and package managers or something along those lines, where it's sort of soft and not it fails open first? We'll let that bake for a quarter, see how that goes, and then sort of and make it fail close after that once we sort of ironed out all the issues. Is that a thing with package managers? Is that how we sort of talk about that with them?
For Ruby, at least, when we wrote the RFC that's still open, the plan we had was to roll it out first of all as an optional thing you could do. You you weren't forced to sign, you weren't forced to verify. You could choose to do either of those things. And probably I would have used my super secret handshake powers to get the folks who work on Rails to exercise it, because that's a nice high profile, high traffic sort of thing to try it out on. I mean, high traffic by Ruby standards. So I think, but I can't sort of give a timeline at the moment for when that would become the case. Like it's very unlikely that it's going to happen like in weeks or even months, depending on what kind of staffing I can get. The context for those who don't know is that while I work at Shopify, I'm in a team that is concentrating on supply chains, and so we work on Ruby gems amongst other things.
Can I ask a related question? So for the folks who are running repositories here, do you offer any kind of SLO? And whether or not you are, do you have an understanding of what kind of uptime your repository has? Because, for instance, if there's no SLO and, I don't want to pick on anyone, but, programming language X repository is down for, 4 hours a day, like Sigstore isn't really the blocker there. So I'd like to understand, kind of what the expectations users have around both for download and for publication of packages.
I can speak for Maven Central. Nothing on any side of that, but the download side is always up thanks to Fastly. We've gotten a lot better on the publish side now that we've got more scale, but we also have people, right? The advantage of having staff that we dedicate to keeping the lights on. But certainly a number communicating to people. I mean, if you look at status.maven.org, you'll see some of the numbers we track, but there's not an actual SLO number associated with that. But we at least share the graph.
Just what do those numbers look like out of interest?
Can I share my screen? Let me see. I actually don't know myself. Let me just log in right now. So the numbers, well, let me just share what the numbers are. And so we have a roll up across the two main publishing hosts of uptime for the hosts themselves. And then we put this, line for the CDN, so Fastly, and then searches uptime. And so everything's been green. So let's see, it looks like I can share. Can folks see status.maven.org? And so, Fastly, everybody remembers when they went down, but this thing should always be at 100. And I'm amazed that OSS is at 99.99. That's been a long time since we've been that green. And then we share this, which is actually some of the stuff that drives our own internal monitors. So the team has SLOs that we use amongst ourselves that are in fact driven by publish latency, how much time between when it's released and when it shows up on Repo 1. And then staging operation duration, which is essentially from when you trigger a staging release to when it completes, which there's a hard timeout by default in the Nexus staging Maven plugin of 300 seconds. So anytime we are in the double-digit seconds, we are in great shape. And then we calculate that independently for the two main publishing hosts. No incidents. Oh, that's great to hear. Oh, sorry. Clearly, I'm not looking at this all the time, which means that we got a little bit of SLO practice that we got to get into. But this is status.maven.org. Folks are actually welcome, please, to have a look and provide feedback. We drive this by statuspage.io account that Sonatype actually has for our other products, and we use carve out a piece of it for Maven Central and the supporting services.
The SLO for Ruby is we hope that the one of two people is awake and at their computer. It's volunteer driven, so it's really what we can get when we can get it. Like Maven Central, we're relying on Fastly, so that takes off a lot of the burden and of the risk. One of the things I joked about recently was that it's sort of like easy to get a large technology or technology using firm to assign developers to work on these things, but it's hard to get them to assign operational or DevOps folks. I'm hoping to spread that thought so that it creates a vibe or a wave of thinking across the industry that, oh yeah, we also need operational help for these organizations. I know I've been looking at that at my end as well. This concludes the rant.
But to come back to the original sort of question about 6-door, so do we really want to sort of measure it against sort of package managers and instead sort of have our own SLO for 6-door so that we can, so that we give less sort of reasons for folks to sort of drop using 6-door and other things because it's not available, for example, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think 6-door needs to have target SLOs just because it's critical security infrastructure, and an outage is really blocking. It might be interesting for package managers to separate the concerns around publishing from and download. Publishing, I imagine QPS is considerably lower than download, and the impact of an outage there is, okay, well, we can't publish a package for a bit. That's not great. Versus on download, if we have an outage and you can't verify, that's a lot more people affected.
But you can verify, right, when you have an outage, because you're not actually checking record most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you're implementing it. If you're doing full offline verification, then sure. But if you have record, you're actually using the record transparency log as part of the verification step, then yeah, it's a critical dependency. So I think it's implementation specific.
Right, and I think that's one of the questions that we've had on the sort of Java side, and it was sort of, at first we just assumed that we would be checking recore for every verification, and sort of as we sort of dug into it, it seems like, for instance, like I think cosign verify the container image doesn't, right? By default, it just uses it just looks at the bundle in the signature in the container registry and does a verification using that bundle. And I think we've come to the conclusion that's what we should be doing by default in sort of for all the languages, because otherwise you'd be sending quite a lot of load to record. And if that was the case, that would kind of reduce any kind of reliability concerns around basically denying all builds because people can't verify any of the packages in their source repos.
Right. So maybe that's the way to slice it. It's just if we're talking about 6-door GA or even pre-GA integration for package managers, we just focus on the critical user journeys around publishing, where that's, if the infrastructure is down, then yes, we're blocked. But that makes the impact of a 6-door outage, considerably less on the read path.
It has the nice property now that you don't have a fault tree with an OR node in between them, so it's got a high probability of failure. It's just a single node with a single probability. So in that respect, assuming of course you trust your CDN to not muck it up. It's sort of interesting. I feel like we should all send a bouquet to Fastly, given that Maven's using it, RubyGems is using it. I know PyPI uses Fastly as well. I don't know, send them a cake or something. Like, I think they're in New York. Oh, you send money? Okay, well they probably prefer that to cake and bouquets. I get it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Package as well. That makes sense. Okay, so is there more that we want to talk about in terms of like what's coming up for 6-door or requests that we might have? Questions about SLOs. I think this has actually been a productive topic of conversation, especially the spin-off about SLOs for package managers themselves. No? Okay, so we've got a request here from Brandon, who's not here today. He wants us to have a look at a survey form. So you may recall a spreadsheet that was circulated earlier, which had a series of question and answer sections about features of the package manager, particular experiences. I think at some point we also added some questions about historical procedures. Has it been pen tested, that sort of thing. And he's looking for sort of people to have a look at the form that's been developed based on that spreadsheet, with the idea that that will be easier for folks to look at or to go through then to fill out the spreadsheet. So I think he wants folks to have a look. I don't think there's much else here to do. I think we'll probably revisit that one again, unless people had a blazing concern that they wanted to raise here. Cool. Sterling, you're up. It says here you want to talk about common terminology.
Yeah. So it's been a while since I've been here, but I've been on vacation and then I got COVID. So early May, I started this document where there was a few conversations we had about like, what does package even mean for the different ecosystems, or what are some common words that we're using, and make sure we're kind of using them all the same way, not necessarily like imposing on each of the ecosystems, but like just having a common understanding of what we mean when we say something. So I've filled out this document partially for Java. And maybe if we had more people here, it would make more sense, but it'd be nice to get other input from other ecosystems, just to fill out some of the same terms and all that. So the permissions on that file might be screwed up. So if you need access, just let me know and I'll click the button. What I can do is maybe send this out to the mailing list so the people who aren't here can weigh in on it. So yeah, I see that there was an email earlier from Brandon Lum. Is that like the good list to send it to? You think?
Should be WG Securing Software Repos, I think is the name of the group.
Okay, yeah. I just don't see very much activity on it, so that's why I wasn't sure.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff happens in either of these calls, and there's a certain amount that happens in Slack, but not much on the mailing lists. And so it's kind of like the LF style of synchronous pulses with asynchronous document work.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll send it out to the mailing list and see if we can get other ecosystems to fill in some terms. And yeah, my idea was that once we had kind of a few different ecosystems, we could sort of distill that into this is what we mean when we talk about that. If there is a common definition for anything.
Is there some sense that you'd wind up with like a matrix to map from the common terminology to particular terminologies?
Yeah, the way the document is set up right now is just like each word has a section for, or I was envisioning it having a section for each ecosystem. And so that's like, if like your ecosystem didn't use that word, you would just say, this is what we call the same thing, assuming you could figure out what that is from looking at the other ecosystem definitions. Or you would just say, we don't have that, in our ecosystem, is where I was thinking it was going to work.
Makes sense. Want to have any questions about the doc? I think it's a great idea. Modular, of course, the hardest thing to do is fill out stuff when you have everything going on at once.
Yeah.
I don't see any other items on the agenda. Did folks have any other business that they wanted to raise while we're still here?
So just want to clarify regarding the survey. What is is this going to be an open survey or a what is the difference between that spreadsheet and this survey?
I'm not sure. I think the main difference is just the ergonomics, but I would defer to Brandon about whether that's the case. But I believe it's mostly that it's easier to fill out a form than a spreadsheet.
Okay. Yeah, but do you know if it is going to be open, or is it going to publish later, or is something going away? For what purpose we are going to use this data?
So some of the data can be shared publicly. So some of the questions are not sensitive. Some of the questions are very sensitive, or could be seen as sensitive. So for example, asking, has your main application server been penetration tested? With most, like a lot of cases, I think people will say no, and they would rather not publish that fact, right? They'd rather not advertise their current security posture. So some of those questions I think will not be published, or will only be shared with, presumably something like academics or other trusted individuals and groups. But then there's stuff like, do you have signing implemented? And most or many package ecosystems have some sort of signing, even if it's not widely used at the moment. And so I don't think that's seen as a sensitive question. That's my guess.
Yeah, and to follow up on how the data will be used, I think a lot of it is just for our understanding in this group of what sort of the state of the art is, to see, are there particularly popular package managers that don't do a whole lot in this space that maybe we should get coming to these meetings, yeah, and just again, more to like monitor, this universe than anything else. And as Jacques mentions, I think there's also potentially some interesting stuff that we could be published and shared with the wider world to raise, sort of awareness of efforts in the space and so on. But mostly just, I find, at least when I'm thinking about problems cutting across ecosystems, it would be really, really nice for me to know, hey, like this, X% of these top repositories have this thing implemented. So maybe it is worth adding, an effort to harden that up or whatever. Yeah, so I think largely in this group, it's very useful to have a lot of those answers. We don't have very specific purposes, but keeping an eye on things. Sorry, Jack.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, the other use you can see being a possibility is that as we develop that sort of insight into the ecosystem of ecosystems, that provides data that we can use to talk to the TAC or the governing board to claw out funding for like one-off projects to implement certain capabilities. So while, for example, many ecosystems have a mix of mostly volunteers, or sometimes they have like a patron organization. It's going to be all over the place. Sometimes you've got an uncle, a daddy Warbucks sort of situation. Sometimes there's an obscure cut, and sometimes you don't. So I think the thing there is that, like, if you look at the open source mobilization plan, that was one of the things that was envisaged, was that there would be sort of like a one-off push or a one-off program of going around different major ecosystems and bringing them up to a common standard. And having this data already gathered would be extremely useful for that push. So that would be another potential use for the data.
Okay, good to know. Thanks, Rod.
No worries. While we're still here, any other business that folks would like to discuss? Okay, it doesn't sound like. In that case, I will give you back 21 minutes. And I hope you all have a nice day or a nice evening or a nice afternoon. Thanks, everybody. Cheerio.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you.